I'm super excited to tell you guys about Swae. My name is Sushant. I'm the founder and CEO, and let's get into it. So, look, Swae is a platform for crowdsourcing ideas and making more inclusive decisions, powered by AI. And we set up Swae to give everyone a voice in decisions that matter to them, but also to turn the growing levels of frustration and complacency into a source of intelligence and constructive solutions for the decision-making process.
Sorry to interrupt you. Can you make a presentation mode, please?
Sure. If I do, because it's on pages, what tends to happen is, let's see if, can you see what I see right now?
Yes, it's much clearer.
Okay, and can you see the next slides as I'm going through it? Yeah, okay, great. Thanks for the interruption. So as I was saying, we set up Swae to give everyone a voice. And really, we created Swae out of lived experience. We've all probably lived through this before, bad decision-making in the workplace or in organizations we belong to. According to MIT and other publications, small, closed, non-diverse teams suffer from much more groupthink and other biases than open and diverse teams. And biased decision-making kills performance, costs companies and organizations millions of dollars, and it happens too often to not ignore. I think of a biased hiring decision, overconfidence about a set of features, and acquisition. These are really, really impaired strategic choices. But aside from the bias, when employees or stakeholders inside an organization experience bias in the decision-making process, it is the leading cause of disengagement. Employees that do, or stakeholders that do experience this, are 3 times more likely to leave their jobs, 3 times more likely to withhold ideas, and 34% less productive than employees that don't experience this. As a former director in charge of budgets and investment decisions, I experienced these 2 problems firsthand and created Swae to change it. So what Swae tries to do is reinvent the decision-making process from the bottom up, based on the merit of arguments, based on the quality of ideas, not based on who's proposing them from what part of the organization. We do this by creating a competition to select the best ideas from. And the process helps to identify bias early, helps to often generate better quality ideas or choices to select from, and it boosts engagement and trust along the process. Let me give you an example shortly of how it works, but it's a 4-step process where users come onto the platform and enter their idea. The idea goes through an AI improvement process. Then we use the crowd to help find problems or concerns, risks, and strengths of the idea, as well as to vote. And depending on how much an idea has gained in terms of metrics and engagement, the idea either graduates to a decision by management, or it goes into the archives and becomes organizational knowledge. So it's a very steady, efficient workflow that you set as management to manage the ideation process inside your organization. So let's take an example. I'm an employee in Walmart's supply chain and operations team. And my manager has asked for feedback around ideas that can help us adapt to COVID and to help us potentially save some money in the process. And I have a health and safety suggestion that I think can help us reduce our exposure to COVID while saving us some money. So I come onto the Swae platform and I log in and I go through this question answer process and fill out my idea. After I fill out the idea, then the AI helps me see the problems with my writing. It points out the weaknesses in some of my expression. It points out biases in the way I've said certain things, shows me a readability score, and suggests some improvements to the writing, as well as summarizes the text for me. So this is sort of an editorial process driven by natural language processing. After I accept or improve these, I put it onto the platform, and my other colleagues can come onto the platform and make changes to the substance of the idea. They can debate the idea, they can add content to the idea, and more importantly, they can also vote on the idea. And the combination of these engagement act as the metrics to determine which ideas move up and which ones don't. So it's very transparent and fair, if you want to say. But management have ultimate discretion. Ideas that come onto their kind of decision-making desk, they accept or reject right on the platform. They provide a reasoning, and this helps to reinforce trust in the process that you've spent a lot of time creating. On the back end, we have some really good analytics about sentiment and other kinds of things that, that are important to the organization to tell you about the health and what people are thinking. We launched in 2019 and have implemented in some really important segments and really large organizations around the world, from Etihad Airways, Bosch, Doctors Without Borders. We've had 25,000 users so far, and a really interesting pipeline of deals in various segments. But prior to COVID, organizations were spending a lot of money trying to deal with employee disengagement, improving innovation capacity, or just better decision making. And the combined spending was a multi-billion-dollar opportunity in segments we already had some strong use cases in. But due to COVID and the consequences of COVID, of people being remote all the time now and not really going back, seeing 10 years worth of digital acceleration in 3 months, and all the new challenges around maintaining alignment and collaborating remotely and making decisions remotely, the market opportunity for us has increased significantly. We're very, very excited about this. The best way to think of Swae is like a Swiss Army knife, where, where it's a very diverse and versatile tool. It could be used in many different settings where you're trying to collect input from a crowd in an efficient, fair, and structured manner. It's not just their input, but their creative ideas towards an unknown problem. So we've used this inside annual general meeting settings, citizen engagement, to innovation experiments inside corporates. And it's the same core features that have been adapted to this. So it's very, very multidisciplinary. There we go. So a couple last points before I conclude. In addition to the scale challenge, we have received some really important recognition about the model of decision-making that we've designed. Some important awards even prior to launching the platform, as well as being covered in important magazines around the world, around, again, the model and the potential of this solution. To date, we've raised almost $1 million in revenue, in portfolio of funding from non-dilutive grants, about $750,000 from there, $130,000 from angels, and generated $100,000 in revenue so far from POCs. We have approximately $90,000 in additional grants coming in from the Canadian government later this year, and we project $1 to $2 million in ARR for next year. We're raising or completing the raise of our angel seed round, which is $500K. 130K of that is already closed, and the majority of that is going towards product and to market. We're doing a Slack and Teams integration and continuing down our AI roadmap. And we have 5,000 to 10,000 enterprise leads that we're hoping to hire a marketing lead and sales lead to go after those, to convert those into business for us. The team is led by myself and my CTO. We're an 8-person team spread across enterprise sales, natural language processing, and other domains. My CTO is a brilliant, award-winning documentary filmmaker who turned into a coder 12 years ago and was the previous tech lead at her startup, which she led to an exit by a US competitor. I'm a social scientist by background and an entrepreneur, 3-time entrepreneur. I've bootstrapped 3 previous startups, 1 to profitability and exit. And we all came together around this, obsession around, improving and upgrading the decision-making process. There are some really exciting prospects on the horizon for us. And I hope investors see the potential and are excited to join our journey. Thank you very much. I look forward to your questions.
Does anyone have any questions?
So I would say your presentation is excellent. Your style is excellent. Can you go back to that? And this idea has been done, a few years ago by a lot of enterprise companies. But what you have done is when you remove the bias, I think that is your key, trillion-dollar idea. So go back to that thing where you have, where you remove the bias slide.
Okay, let me. Is this the?
Okay, yeah, this is the one. So you said
right.
Something happens and the biases get removed right here.
So biases get identified, and we provide language and suggestions for removing them. So the autonomy is still in the hands of the author, but the natural language processing helps you understand how poorly you might be writing an idea. If it's filled with a lot of I and a lot of confirmation biases and other things, it helps to point it out so that you can better present your idea. And if I can, Vince, just to expand on this a little bit around the AI, think of it like without this, a lot of our ideas that are generated are biased opinions. With the AI improvement process and the collective intelligence, you have a chance to identify the problems and kind of, iterate on that idea so that it has more substance and less fluff in it before it reaches a decision desk.
That is a beautiful, beautiful thing, because human mind to take a decision is the biggest problem. So you're helping it. So let's go back to the executive. Remember, when you collect this, you go to senior executives and
that's right.
Remember the slide? That slide is not clear to me. Yeah, this one. So
right.
how
Okay.
the bias here? So, okay, first of all, I love your idea. Your idea has been executed many times, so people have failed. And the reason was because there was no AI. So that's your magic component. Now explain me this slide. How do you remove bias here? That's my question.
So this is obviously a snapshot of just, a GIF more or less. But when an idea graduates to the desk of a manager, you see the full proposal in all of its iterations. You see the entire debate that's happened around the proposal, and you see all the metrics that it has achieved. And the metrics are preset by management. So if you're management and you're looking for, you could sit back and say, I only want to see ideas that have received at least 5 complete changes or edits. They have had 5 biases identified and changed inside the proposal, 5 strengths, and a minimum score of 80 from at least 100 people. Once those metrics are achieved, then you sort of see it all, and you see the history of the evolution of the document. And at the end of it, you get to decide whether this is aligned with your strategic direction, worth investing in further, or for some reason it's not. So it's a very different UI than what I'm presenting you here.
Yeah, no, I'm not questioning your UI. Never, because it's a slide deck. Absolutely fantastic answer. Thank you.
Can I make a comment? You mind?
Yes. Yes.
So I love this bias component as well. But one thing that is great about this bias removal is, it could be someone who doesn't speak English. And so English is their second language. And when they write something up, they don't know how to perhaps write it up properly. So if it was just left alone, the text was just left alone, then it probably wouldn't go to the top. So when the AI looks at the text, it removes bias, but also corrects, the text that's not written correctly.
Rosemary, I love your question. It sort of speaks to my background and how we built Swae too. I was a strategy consultant back in the day, and a lot of the things I would do is to collect ideas from the workforce and present them in ways that management understood them. That's a skill. And I realize that a lot of people don't have this skill. And this is a common problem in a lot of crowdsourcing or innovation platforms, is that they provide workflows, but they don't provide access to augmented language improvement, which means only the people that have great language, most of the time, their ideas are the ones that are best presented. If you're trying to reach frontline workers or have workers in countries that English is not their primary language, like we did with Etihad, you want to help them augment their writing. And if doing so, you're sort of expanding your funnel to collect ideas from. Yeah, thanks for that prompt. It's one of the core reasons why we built Swae.
The idea could come from the janitor or the senior vice president.
Absolutely.
Written the same way, essentially.
And on that note, Rosemary, just to back up a little bit as well, before we sort of built the AI, in order to train the AI, we used to kind of edit the ideas ourselves and a team of analysts. We'd receive ideas from, frontline staff at an airline or other like citizens inside Mexico City, and they don't have English as the primary language, and or their Spanish wasn't up to speed at the same level. So we would do a lot of those editings ourselves and tag them and train our AI models that way too. So it's a really, really significant problem that's not really been addressed in the market yet.
There's a few questions in the chat box as well.
Sure. Let me just go in the chat.
Taylor Ferris, how does the system combat inherent selection bias on the part of an executive decision makers? Or does it rely on the openness of mind and or pressure from the workforce user group? What features do you expect to add to enhance the integrity of user outcomes?
So if I understand it correctly, it's a nuanced answer. I think the types of organizations we pre-screen and we work with already are open to receiving feedback and including people in the process. It's not like we're going to a family-run business for 100 years that has an executive at the helm and is doing this for cosmetic reasons. So that sort of mindset already exists. But, pressure from the workforce shouldn't be the reason why they accept something. There's a lot of reasons why something is or isn't accepted. And in most cases, ideas aren't accepted. But what they see value in is communicating to the workforce around why certain things are the way they are and providing them an opportunity to build skills, to feel heard, to have their time and efforts respected. And this has tremendous value in terms of engagement, retention, productivity. And I try to capture it here in a slide called the layers of value. I mean, it's not just breakthrough discoveries that we're trying to unlock. It's all these layers of engagement, skills, identifying leaders that a system like this allows you to present. And at the end of the day, also, management have a lot of discretion over the metrics they select to determine what moves up and what doesn't. So there's a lot of autonomy built into it.
Another question is it based on the majority of respondents' views?
No, that's one of the metrics that we use. But for example, another metric we're building in is diversity. Geographic diversity, age diversity, functional diversity, and we're allowing management to select whether they even want that to be one of their metrics or not. So if you want to make this a voting competition, you can just select voting as your metric. If you want this to be an iterative improvement process, then you can sequence your metrics so that those are the outcomes that it presents to you. But the discretion is to the management. And we don't think that the voting thing is a really good idea. You often get a lot of crappy ideas that flow through the process that really frustrate people at the end of the day.
There's another question. If it was majority views, that would imply willingness on the part of the executive to submit the majority rule. No, but I've already answered that question. So it's an excellent idea and platform, in particular, reducing bias on the creative side and promoting collaboration. That said, bias on the part of decision makers tends to be the greatest obstacle in enhancing strategic outcomes. Isn't it not anonymous when it goes to the senior executives?
Yeah, it does. So in the choice is the inputters to make their idea anonymous or not. So if I want to be known, then I can keep it open, or if I maintain an anonymity, then until it reaches the executive decision, no one knows who it's come from. Once it's decided upon, if it's accepted, the identity is revealed. If it's rejected, then the identity remains anonymous so that you don't lose credibility or whatever through this process. And that also helps remove some biases in terms of, associating good or bad things to specific people inside the organization. What we're trying to do is really help you hear merit, help you hear these ideas. And a brilliant, mentor or person we look up to, Ray Dalio, implements this kind of system inside their company and their investment firm, Bridgewater, called idea meritocracy, where anyone can challenge any idea based on merit and the believability of their arguments. We think this is a way more superior way of decision making than a couple of experts in a room making decisions around tons of things that are unknown in today's age.
So Taylor, you may need to unmute yourself. I'm not sure what this means. It says, so our curiosity is focused on that end of the spectrum. Taylor?
I didn't understand the question. So yeah, if you don't mind.
Unmuting. Okay. I think that we're going to move on. So if you could stop sharing, that would be great.
Yes, sure. Let me grab there we go. Thank you very much for your time. I'm leaving my email here. If there are any other questions or feedback or criticisms or whatever, would love to hear from you.
Thank you.